Ain't no surprise I didn't get these scars from falling over in church. I told some lies, broke some laws and ties instead of good hard work. When I die, I'll take nothing that I took down in the dirt. Lord, I'll cry and I'll be avenged by all those I hurt.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining me today on Untitled. My name is Zachary Allen. As I mentioned last week, we are going to be starting a series of videos about more of the health and life-related stuff. Now, first and foremost, I want to reiterate what I said last week about experts. I'm not an expert. I believe there are very few experts out there. And if you would like some more information from people that I would say are more expert-like in these subjects, I'm going to give you a few things here to start the video. So first and foremost, I guess the gold standard when it comes to the topic today is a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. It's good for introductions to like how habits and behavior change work. Personally, I like The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg more. It's a solid book. It's got great examples and stories. I think it was a more interesting read, so I'd suggest that. And there is also some great information from Andrew Huberman and the Huberman Labs podcast. He's a neuroscientist from Stanford, and he's produced tons of information about everything related to health and specifically habit forming in general. So I'd suggest giving him a look. You can just Google Huberman Lab podcast habits. And then I would say there are countless studies. So if you go on PubMed, that's a good place to start if you want to look at more of the scientific or journal information on it. There's tons of information out there. I'm not going to be telling you guys anything that's new or unique to me or unique to like my way of doing things. This is a very primitive part of our brain that handles these functions. So as far as like the science and the biohacking and bullshit out there that people sell in order to get you to a better place, I'm going to get into this more, but we're talking analog versus digital essentially here. And there's only so much you can do with an analog mechanism. It's got very limited inputs and outputs. So the areas of our brain that are handling those things are not going to be parts of our brain that we can logically reason with. It's not our prefrontal cortex a lot of the time. It's an area of our brain that's very primitive. And we're going to get to that. There's a few other things that I want to say before we start. First and foremost, I am my own test dummy. I like to practice on myself. I would encourage you to practice on yourself. And what I mean by practicing on yourself is I don't mean in trying experimental medicine or science. What I'm talking about is mitigated risk based on your past performance, your past struggles, and making educated moves forward on yourself. Don't look at what everybody else is doing and say this is going to work for me because it worked for them. Look at what they did and go, what can I draw from that and practice on myself? So if you know somebody who's lost weight, you probably know someone who's lost weight doing a low-carb diet, for example. And low-carb diets are very effective because a huge portion of what people eat is carbohydrates. So if you just say, I'm not having carbs anymore, but you don't change your diet very much other than that, you're inevitably going to cut your calories significantly by cutting out your carbs. Now, you might work construction or something, or you might do something that requires a little bit more of an energy burn versus someone who's sitting a desk job and can get by without the carbs. So it might not work for you, but the only way to really know is to maybe test or practice on yourself in a safe way, giving yourself that input and not expecting the results that somebody else got. So that's what I mean by practice on yourself, practicing on me, practicing on yourself. The other thing that I would like to present is not going to be something that sciencey people will give the thumbs up, but I believe that if they are honest with themselves, they will admit this. There are metaphysical implications and determinations that come about by making changes. There is something that changes within you when you start making changes that is not measurable. Sorry if I just Kamala Harris that. That was like a, will be unburdened by the things that once were, or whatever nonsense she said the other day. What I mean by that is that there are objective realities to the decisions you make. If you cut your calories and you are in a calorie deficit, you can lose weight. And that is an objectively measurable thing based on calorie in versus calorie out. But the metaphysical things are the things that are subjective that may affect you by doing this, but they may not affect somebody else the same. So, for example, when I fast, I get incredibly clear-minded, and I feel like my senses are increased. And what I mean by that is the things that I smell stronger. The things that I see, my visual acuity, sound, all my other senses are extremely heightened. Now, this is subjective. Not everybody feels this. And me personally, I feel it like through the roof. Like I can smell things in the house that no one else can smell. I can hear things. I can see things. My vision gets better. And these things I have to decide, are these positives or are these negatives? In some ways, there are negatives to fasting. Like, you don't have much energy and your blood sugar kind of can go all over the place for the first few days. But there are tests that you can do on yourself and determine if the subjective results outweigh, or are beneficial in a way that even if I'm not seeing necessary objective results right away, like losing weight or, a smaller waist size, I'm still getting subjective benefit out of the decisions that I'm making. And that's why I really encourage you to pay attention to what you're doing when you are making these changes and when you're going through kind of a reconstruction in your life and looking at the habits that you want to restructure is be very clear on what exactly you're looking for change in. Are you looking for subjective change, meaning the way that you feel, the way that you feel about yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, however it is? Or do you want physical hardline changes? Because what I can tell you is you're going to get both. But if you're only looking for objective changes and you're going through a rough period, like I can remember a specific time where I was stuck within like a 10-pound window for probably a month and a half during a huge weight loss chunk. And I really struggled with that because it was like I'm doing all this work and I'm not seeing it. But in the meantime, I was getting in better shape. I was seeing progress in other areas, but it wasn't in the objective area that I was measuring. So it was a little bit more difficult to understand. That's why I would say be very clear and concise with what you're looking for. Understand the subjective and objective positives and negatives that could come from the decisions that you make, and use yourself as the test dummy within reason. Don't do anything unsafe, but safety is relative. Me not eating for 60 days, fine. A 14-year-old not eating for 60 days, fucking stupid. Stupid. So there's a big difference between the risk that I can take and the risk that somebody else can take, because the risks that I'm willing to put myself through that don't affect the people other than me are going to be different than the risks that you'd be willing to put yourself through. So be very clear and concise about what you want. Understand the risks involved and determine, am I willing to take on the risks for this potential benefit? And understand that those benefits that you're seeking may not be the benefits that you receive. And that's fucked, but that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. You will sometimes not get what you desire, even if you put in all the right work. Just the roll of the deck sometimes. Last night, my buddy John and Nick, who was on the podcast, were playing Monopoly. 4 hours. Monopoly was great. I did end up winning. It's not why I told this. But like John had a great first 4 or 5 rounds, and his strategy didn't necessarily change, but his luck did, meaning that the outcome of the rolls was not necessarily the same as it was, even though he was rolling the same, even though his mindset was the same in how he was playing. But the dude landed on luxury tax and income tax so many times, the dude didn't get to collect go for probably like 10 turns. And then on top of that, he ended up having to leverage like all of his properties to me, and that's what put him out. So what we intend to happen is not always going to happen. Even if you're rolling the dice the same way and you're doing everything that you're supposed to, it's not necessarily going to work the way that you want it to work. And you have to be okay with that. Before we get too far into this, I do want to go ahead and let you guys know that today's sponsorship is paper towels. That's all I have from paper towels. they're really not doing anything new. Paper towels, we're here. Paper towels, what a product. Been around for what seems like thousands of years. I actually have no idea when paper towels were invented, but I'm going to go ahead and give that a Google real quick. When were paper towels invented? 1907. Oh, 1879. Thank you, Clarence and Irving Scott. The Scott paper. There we go. Scott paper towels. Learn something new every day, people. Before we get into this on habits too much, I think that we kind of have to go back a step. And in order to go back, this is life. Sometimes you have to take steps back in order to move forward. And I think in order to understand how to move forward, you need to understand where you're at in the paradigm of change. I like to start people off in what's called the 5 stages of change. And the 5 stages of change are just a model that was put out by a psychologist in order to provide people some baseline of understanding possibly where you're at in this. So pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. I'm going to go through each one of these, and you might hear one that stands out to you. So pre-contemplation it's really not part of change, because in pre-contemplation, you're not even aware that a change needs to be made. This would be the person who smokes cigarettes and maybe doesn't even understand the health risks, which is hard to believe, and then simply has no need or desire for change. They are just content with everything as is. This could be that the behavior is not a problem, or it hasn't been discovered to be a problem yet, or it's been discovered to be a problem and the person just doesn't care. Then you get into contemplation, and contemplation is where there's that little itch in the back of your head that's like, I need to fucking do something. I'm getting fat. I'm getting lazy. I don't look good. I'm unhappy. Something needs to change. And the psychologist who developed this model, I forget what his name is. Let me see. Who created 5 models of change? Let me see. This name doesn't look familiar, but it essentially says James Prohoshka and Carlo Di Clemente. Framework describe the phases which one goes through, which progress during health-related behavior change. So contemplation is you have a desire, you see a problem, and you want to do something about it, and you'll probably make a change or revert back to pre-contemplation within the next 6 months. For the people who decide that they're actually going to do something, they then enter what's called a preparation phase, and that's phase 3 of change. So at this point, you have decided that you are going to make a change and that you desire to do this, and you're probably going to take action in the next 30 days. This process can be instantaneous, meaning like you can go from contemplation to preparation immediately. You can go from contemplation to action immediately. An example of this would be when my wife and I were going through some problems and we were going to be getting divorced. We both took rapid action immediately on areas of our life that we needed to change. Me personally, I started getting in the gym and trying to get healthy and taking responsibility for where I had fucked up along the way in not taking care of myself. And I went from no desire to make a change to I bought a gym membership and was in the gym and changed my diet within 24 hours. Within 24 hours, I was like, I have to make some change. Once I had gotten there. Now, here's the thing. I sat in pre-contemplation contemplation from December until February. So for 2 months, I was kind of bouncing in between like this. I'm unhappy. Things suck. My life is miserable. I need to make a change to fuck it. I don't care. I'm going to die anyway, so who cares? And I'd bounce back and forth between that until eventually I looked at it and go, you know what? I want to live. I have hope. So that preparation immediately went into action. And action is when you actively start taking steps to accomplish your goals. This could be anything, whether it's saving money, paying off debt, losing weight, buying a house, going to the gym. It is that you are making actionable steps that get you closer and closer to this. And this action can take place for up to 6 months before it becomes what's called maintenance. The reason why they've changed it to maintenance at that point after 6 months is because they determined that most people who have kept up with these changes that they're trying to make for 6 months will continue to keep them up. Now, here's the thing. The data shows that even people who keep them up for up to 5 years have a chance of going all the way back to pre-contemplation. There are people who make the change and they go for 50 years and then screw it up. So like this maintenance phase is potentially bouncing back and forth between maintenance, action, preparation, like all these different areas. It's not like once you're there, you've arrived. It's just more of a pathway to understanding how it works. So we go through these periods of time, and let me take you through one. So I want to lose weight. I'm thinking about losing weight. I start doing some research on some gyms near me. I'm moving from pre-contemplation into contemplation. I'm doing research and trying to figure out what could I do to lose weight. I start looking at diets. I follow a few people on YouTube and Instagram and start taking some advice, taking some notes, weigh myself, come up with a routine, look at my schedule. Those are all part of pre-contemplation. Now, as soon as I buy that gym membership and start going, as soon as I go to the grocery store, I'm now in action. I'm making steps. And for the next 30 days, all I'm doing is trying to keep up the action. Once I've gotten through that first month and I move into, full-time action where I'm kind of in that first 30 days, you're kind of bouncing between contemplation and action, where you're not fully committed, but you're committed. And at a certain point, you just commit and you start acting on it. Well, 6 months into this, let's say you lose the weight. Well, the reason behind the start is going to dictate where you stay. If it was, I want a healthier lifestyle and I want to continue to be healthy and stay healthy, you might stay in maintenance for the rest of your life. But if it was only about the goal to lose the weight, you might go right back to pre-contemplation and quit going to the gym and start this whole cycle all over again. And don't say that's not how it goes, because I did that 4 fucking times before I lost the weight. And I almost just did it again because I let this stupid injury that I have control my mindset. And I let it completely dictate to me what I thought about where I was. I'm not saying that like I've figured this out now and that now I'm all better. No, I'm still struggling with it. Like I'll be good for a week, and then next thing I know, I'm doing something that doesn't support my goals. So when I say this is a very difficult thing to grasp, I was good for 5 years. I was good and going, but I didn't expect the injury to happen, and that completely kicked me out. And that's my excuse. In all reality, I mentally quit on myself when that happened, and I let myself go back to a place of, pre-contemplation, contemplation. It was really a deep time that was contemplative, where I'm trying to figure out what is the purpose of all this. Like, why am I even doing this? But I say all that to say that figuring out where you are is a big step in moving forward, because you can't just jump straight into action. Most people, yeah, I did it. But like I said, I didn't do the work ahead of time so that when injury happened, I had no plan. And yeah, you can plan and do things along the way. I'm not saying you have to plan out the rest of your life and how you're going to stay healthy for the next 40 fucking years. Like that's ridiculous. What I'm saying is you have to have a plan at least that butts up against what you foresee being your biggest hurdles. And then having a general idea on how you would handle those things moving forward, you can come up with them. I would just say plan for injury. That would be one thing I would say, and just plan like, what can I do? Like if I get injured and it's a leg injury, what am I going to do? If I get injured and it's an upper body injury, what am I going to do? You don't have to have a detailed plan, but just make sure you understand that it's a likelihood. And if that happens, you have to be willing to stick with it regardless of what it is. That covers pretty much everything in the the stages leading up to development. Now, I mentioned something earlier about the analog versus the digital brain. And if you're not really sure what that means, I'm going to pause for 5 seconds. Google digital versus analog. So if you went ahead and just Googled the digital versus analog thing, and if you already knew what it was, great. Awesome. But think about it. The easiest way to think about it is like clocks. One of them shows you numbers, and one of them shows you hands pointing at numbers, and you have to read it from there. When we think about the human brain is like layers of a shell. And on the inside, and lower parts of the brain, you typically have what are your more primitive or analog functioning brain, where it's just your brain is basically looking for a yes no answer. It's looking for a go no go. And it does that by pattern recognition. It does that by habit recognition. It does that by sensory recognition of where you are in the day, time, sound, smell, all those different things. Those are controlled by a part of your brain that doesn't want to think, versus the outer parts of our brain, which are, if you're looking at this evolutionary, think about it this way. You have this old lizard brain in your head, and then you have this new fancy digital computer on the outside of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, and in other areas of your brain that are meant for higher processing and logical reasoning. So all of the stuff that involves like habit formation is all handled by that go no go. So it's all happening subconsciously for most people without them even making a decision to do this. This is kind of like the idea of you asking the question of what is this that I'm looking at versus not even recognizing what you're looking at. Your brain, and here's a fun thought experiment. When you get up in the morning and you do things like brush your teeth and in your morning routine, you probably don't even think about what order you're doing it in anymore, because it's just subconscious. You just follow through with the routine because the routine is so ingrained in your head. I bet you wash your body the same way. You put the same shoe on first. You put the same leg in the pants. You probably Q-tip your ears. You probably start brushing your teeth on the same side of your mouth, the same part of your teeth every time, whether it's the outsides or the insides or the tops or the bottoms, whatever it is. You do these things without even thinking about it. And that's because your analog brain is just handling those tasks, because thinking is expensive. And your brain is always trying to find a way to spend less energy and spend less time on thinking. So the less time that you're thinking, the more energy you're conserving. And your brain is not concerned over how happy you are necessarily. Your brain is concerned over surviving. We really, and we'll get to like we'll get to kind of like drive and what drives most people and why those things work. But what I really want to focus on is how habits work, how we create habits, how we break habits, because habits are the building blocks for a successful long-term lifestyle. If you can change the subconscious patterns that your brain is going through, and if you can change the subconscious thoughts that your brain is performing on a regular basis, then you have kind of a leg up when it comes to the conscious decisions. So I'm not saying you're going to be able to interrupt your subconscious. This is going to be a practice skill. It's going to be something that most people are going to really struggle with. Now, when it comes to accomplishing these goals, the number one question that I ask people is, how bad do you want it? Because I can't want it more than you. If I want you to be skinny more than you want to be skinny, if I want you to be sober more than you want to be sober, if I want you to be healthy more than you want you to be healthy, it's never going to work. It's never going to work for you because you have to want it more than anybody else. You have to want it more than even yourself in a way. You have to change your life for the things you want. If you get a promotion at work and it requires you to change your schedule, you don't go, I guess I'm not going to take the promotion because I don't want to change the schedule. It's like, no, I'm going to go from working 5 days a week to 4 10s so that I can do this and blah, 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 blah. Like, we will make the change for the things that we deem necessary and important to our survival. And money is a good one. And a lot of people don't care about their health until it's fucking broken. Like, I didn't care that my back was degenerating and falling apart until I started feeling it, because I didn't know. And we're so unaware of all these things that are going on in our lives and in our bodies and in our minds that we don't really recognize the problem until it's too late. And everyone's going to respond to change differently. And as a whole, human beings are pretty averse to change, because that analog version of our brain, when it recognizes that the pattern is different, it freaks out. And it's like, I don't like this. This is costing too much energy. And it does things to retard action and retard growth in order to keep you safe in a way, to keep you protected. Your body is only seeking to protect you. Now, there are three things that are typically driving humans. Now, some people are going to disagree with this, But I would say these are the three things that drive human beings in all actions. Life, the will to live, the will to survive. We all desire to live. Like everyone wants to keep living. People that are struggling with debilitating mental disorders and depression, these people want to be out of pain. They want to thrive. They don't just want to live. They want to prosper. And that goes above life, but at a very basic place, everybody at least has one, a drive for life. Then that second part is the thriving, that typically people want more than just life. They want other things. And now thriving is subjective, and this is why it's kind of a tough one. But what I would say is everybody has something that they want specifically that isn't required for life, but makes life better or more enjoyable. At least that's their thought on it. Like for me, it was always, if I could just get this weight off and thrive a little bit, I'll be happier. And because I'll be happier because the weight's gone, I'll be able to thrive. Like I'll be able to have more than just life. It's life abundantly. It's that pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's that thriving. That's that going above and beyond just the basic things of life. And if you tell me like you don't believe that this is a real thing, I would just say look at celebrities. The only reason celebrities exist is because thriving is a basic desire of human beings. Like you want more than you need. You want more than you have. We want to thrive. We want to have this ability to consume our desires and indulge ourselves to a point where we have more than we need. And some people don't. There are some people who are fairly altruistic and are not necessarily seeking more than they have, but are just looking for more of what they have. And maybe they want to give back. And I'd say probably the last reason why most people do things. So first is just to meet your basic survival skills, then to thrive, to not only make yourself happy. So it's past survival. There's this need for things and that need to show those things to other people. But I'd say the last reason is reproduction. Most people do things for sex. Sex is a big driver. Freud made a hell of a living off of that thought concept of that everything is about sex. But I would say that the pursuit of reproduction is not necessarily just for pure pleasure. So there are two great books out there, and I would suggest both men and women read both of these books. There is Wild at Heart, and there is Captivating. So Captivating is a book by John Eldredge and his wife about women and how women think and how women view the world versus men. And that's Wild at Heart is about men. Now, I think both of these books were pretty spot on in how men and women seek attention from either each other, from the same sex or the opposite sex. I'll speak for most men, but we desire to kind of let out that inner man. Most men want to be a problem solver. Most men want to be dependable. Most men want to be a provider, a bulwark, a safety beacon for a family. We desire to be valued and needed. And we seek that by having a strong drive, more things, that thriving. We seek that through money. We seek that through status. We seek that through sex and sexual conquest. Whereas with women want to feel captivating. And I would say the most striking thing of being captivating is being noticed, standing out, being that. Okay, perfect example. Bridgerton. Now, I read the books, and before you guys get all salty about me reading little romance books, I'm trying to find things to connect with my wife on. She likes those books. They're really not that bad. They're pretty good books. The stories, I could avoid some of the topics. But the big thing is the women being like the premier thing that everyone is looking for, and there's always like one woman that everyone was going after in the show each season, whatever it is, whether it be a man or women who is being the desired person. But for women, it's that, am I being noticed? I'm not saying that women are self-centered or anything like that. What I'm saying is the desire for what makes a woman feel good about themselves is different than what it is for a man. For a man, He might be empty, have money, drive, power, but if he could do all that without kids, without a family, and find that fulfillment in the work. I don't believe women, regardless of how successful they are, will ever find fulfillment in work because it's not what they were designed to do, just like men weren't designed to be bums and jerking off and looking at porn and all those things that they're doing to fulfill those desires so that they don't have to go out and work hard and make money and impress a woman and earn the privilege of being with that woman. And like, we fall short of that all the time. What we want is we want to feel validated, and how we feel validated is different. How a man in general feels validated is different than how a woman feels valid in general. When I could have a good day with work and feel like a man. My wife could have the best day at work ever, but if I don't tell her that I love her, if I don't give her a hug, if I don't show her attention, that could ruin all of those bad things because I did not notice her. She did not feel captivating. Whereas with me, I don't feel successful, it can affect my day. So I'm speaking in generalities here because I'm trying to put out material that people understand in general. This isn't specific to everybody, and that's the big fucking problem with medicine, and that's the big fucking problem with everything in podcasting and social media is people take this general stuff and they say it's specific. This is for you. This is for you. No, this may not be for you. This may not be for you. And that's okay. That is 100% okay. The big question is, how does this all tie into habit? How can this help us create a drive or break through like a mental barrier or modify something that we're doing incorrectly? There's a lot of things that really need to be done, and there's a lot of ways that this ties in. First and foremost, the reason why I said the thing about the biological desire is that if you look at what experts say, as well as if you look at typical things in your life, if a habit is not tied, because you have, okay, so let's pause for a second. Remember what I said earlier, analog versus digital. Habits are handled by the analog part of your brain. Go, no go. It's just looking for pattern recognition. That part of your brain only cares about, life, thrive, sex. Does this help me live? Does this help me thrive? Does this help me get laid? If it doesn't do one of those things, you're going to have a real hard time keeping that habit going because it doesn't meet the criteria for your analog brain to go, this is good. This is good. Go, go, go. No go, no go, no go. So do you understand what I'm saying? Like, if I want to quit smoking, but quitting smoking doesn't get me laid, quitting smoking doesn't help me thrive more, and quitting smoking doesn't help me live, then I'm going to have a real hard time doing it. But if quitting smoking helps me live longer, and quitting smoking helps me have a better quality of life because I'm not hacking up things, I don't stink all the time, and because I don't stink all the time and I'm not having to go out and smoke all the time, I'm around people more, which means I get to meet somebody and potentially find a wife and get married and have the family that I want. So it meets all three of those criteria if you logic it out. The issue is a lot of the time the change that we want to make does not benefit us more than how we're currently living because it's a pipe dream. It's an unrealistic thing. If you want to lose weight and live longer and feel better and make you a more desirable person, all of those boxes can be checked, but you have to have those conversations with yourself, and you have to think this. You can't, you have to explain to your brain in a way why you're doing the things that you're doing. This comes down to the why. And I say this to people all the time. What's your why? Why are you doing this? Because if the why is not good enough, one, I don't want to work with you. And two, I don't think you're going to be able to accomplish your goals. You have to have an incredible why. The why has to mean something to you because you're asking your brain to change everything that it's doing. That why has to be pretty powerful. Is your life cutting short? Are you miserable? Are you an incel? Like, I don't know. It has to be driven from a powerful why. There's an incredible book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. He says something in that book, and I'll explain a little bit more, but there's a famous quote that says, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how." Meaning that no matter how difficult things get, if there is a powerful enough reason behind it or a purpose behind it, you can get through just about anything. Now, if you say that's bullshit, Google Viktor Frankl real quick. Yeah, so Frankl went through some shit. This dude had a super successful psychological and psychiatric practice where he was searching for purpose. He was searching for meaning. He was trying to figure things out that were going to help people. He was a prominent Jewish psychiatrist prior to World War II. And he gets locked up in an internment camp. He is inevitably met like, what is my purpose now? Like, what? I had this purpose. My purpose was to do this, and I thought that was the purpose of my life. So what is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of life? As I sit here in this internment camp, I am just waiting out my days till I get killed. If you haven't wrestled with this question at some point in your life, I would argue you are very blessed or ignorant. If you haven't sat down and had a tough conversation with you of like, what am I doing with my life? You either haven't met challenge yet, and I don't envy you when you do, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're more than likely older than 16, other than maybe Alex, if you're out there. Like, you are probably meeting some pretty tough challenges in your life. And if you're not analyzing those challenges that you're meeting and trying to figure out how to overcome them, I'd say you're just going through the motions. But Viktor Frankl's wrestling with this, and he wrestled with this harder than probably anybody else. Like, imagine you are a very successful person and you're just locked up, put on death row essentially for a crime you didn't commit. A crime you did commit, but your crime is unreasonable. Your crime is something you can't change about yourself. The color of your skin, your ethnic identity, your religion, whatever it is that you can't change because it's just who you are. But he's asking himself, what is the meaning of life? And I think that one of his answers, I think his answer to this is probably one of the most powerful things I've ever read. And I'm going to read it to you guys. I have it written down here. And he says, ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life, he can only respond by being responsible. And when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. Man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be and what will become of the next moment. By the same token, every human being has the freedom to change at any instant. The meaning of life is subjective. Viktor Frankl's purpose in that moment wasn't to understand the grand meaning of life, but to understand that everybody's meaning for life varies from moment to moment. In this moment, my purpose is different than my moment when Teddy gets home. My purpose is to be a dad. I don't have some grand unifying purpose in life that is going to change the world necessarily. It's the day-to-day purpose. It's the moment-to-moment purpose. It's being present. And I fuck this up all the time. I'm not there when Teddy needs me sometimes. Mentally, I'm reading a news article, or I'm playing a game on my phone, or I'm just being a terrible parent. You know, I'm not doing all of the things that I need to do. Sometimes I'm not a good employee because I'm not paying attention in the meeting or whatever it is. Like, we are so trapped by everything that is happening outside of the moment that we forget our purpose within the moment. And it's a really dark thought, but it's a really light thought at the same time, because while it single-handedly breaks you and tells you you don't have a grand unifying purpose, it gives you hope in knowing that, but you have a purpose in every moment, and you understanding what your purpose is in those moments is really what matters. And being conscious and aware of what moment you are in life in order to make a change and develop what you need to be in that moment, that can happen that quickly. It can happen instantly. And I do believe that. I do believe that you can make a decision to change your life right now, and that can completely shift every decision that you were going to make moving forward. But it starts by discovering your why. You know, why was Viktor Frankl doing those things? He had his why. I had my why in the things that I do, but you have to figure out your why. If you want to lose weight, you want to be more active, you want to get a promotion, you want to stop feeling pain, you want to be emotionally regulated, inevitably you want something. You're going to have to change. You're going to have to create something different about yourself. You're going to have to develop habits that drive this change. And if that why isn't good enough, you're not going to keep doing those things. You're not going to keep them up and keep going. It's just what happens. I have a whole gym right here, and I miss multiple days a week, even though I have the intent and the plan, because if my why isn't good enough for going down there, meaning that I don't believe in that reason why, it's going to make it real hard. If my why is just to do it because I know it's good for me, that's not good enough. I know this is bad for me, even though it's better than cigarettes, but I still do it. Why? Well, because in all reality, I'm kind of making a devil's bargain that this is going to keep me from doing something else that I want to do, like drugs or whatever, and that I will pay this devil's bargain if it keeps my head from doing another thing, if it keeps me and satisfies me from going and doing something else that I want to do. I'll make that devil's bargain with myself, but that's for fucking me. And any adult that tells me that this should be illegal or that or blah, 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 it's like, you're an idiot, okay? You worry about yourself. You go figure out your own why. And when you're done figuring out your own why, then I'll ask you for help. But we live in a society of outrage and Karens and Kurt's or whatever we're calling the male version of a Karen, of just people who want to feel like their why is the most important why, and it's the grand unifying why. Everyone's why is different. Even two fat people who want to lose weight are doing it for two different reasons because they're both different people. Why do you want to be more active? Why do you want to get promoted? Why do you want to be pain-free? Why do you want to regulate your emotions? Well, I want to be more active because I don't like sitting around my house. Cool. Why don't you like sitting around your house? Because I'm alone and I'm depressed when I'm alone and I want to be around people. Great. You want to thrive. You want life. You want community. It's a good reason. Why do you want to be promoted? Well, I want to be promoted because I want more money so that my wife can work less and she can have another kid, or so that I can give more money to my church or an organization that I want to do more work with, or maybe I want to start a side hustle. Great. You got to come up with your why. Why do you want to be pain-free? Well, who the hell wants to be in pain? That's an easy one. You're not thriving when you're in pain. Why do you want to regulate your emotions? Because you feel like you are a slave to your emotions and it inevitably gets you in trouble. And you don't like feeling like you're not in control of your emotions. Like, that's an easy thing. Ultimately, if they help you live, if they help you thrive, if they help you reproduce, they are going to be things that drive behavior. They're going to be things that help push the needle forward and get you to a better place. But if you don't see your why as a good enough reason to change, you never will. You never will make change. You need to have a strong why. You need to have an incentive or a reward structure that keeps you going so that there is something that's driving that behavior forward. I hope this information is beneficial into understanding your habits, why you're doing the things that you're doing. I hope you take a good look at the behaviors and the actions and the things that you're doing and figure out, like, hey, is there something here? Is there something more? Is there something better? Is there something that can help me live or thrive? I'm I'm going to get more into other topics. I have tons of material written on these subjects, and I love talking about this stuff because what I do for me, I don't necessarily think of that whole like what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think that some things are good for some people and not all things are good for all people. There are some universal goods, there are some universal bads. And there's a whole fuck ton of gray in the middle. And what I can tell you is you're going to live in the gray and you're going to aim for the black and white because that's what we do. And all of these little things that I'm going to talk about over the coming weeks, I hope help with that. As far as kind of the areas that I'm going to go through, I'm going to list off a few subjects here of things that I'm looking forward to talking about. I want to talk about muscular systems. I want people to understand how your physical body works, how your muscles move, how they do the things that they do, so that way you feel a little bit more empowered in understanding of what your body's doing and why we do what we do in the gym. We talked about habits today. We're going to talk about habits throughout, and that's why I wanted to introduce that one first, because all of these different areas that we talk about are going to involve changing habits and lifestyle things that you do. I want to talk about diets in general. What are good diets? What are bad diets? What is a fad diet? Why do fad diets work? How do they work? What fad diets are bullshit and which ones actually have some science to them? Because look, there's a little bit of truth in these things, which is why they're good. The best lies have a little bit of truth in them. There's a reason there's like 10 religions that all kind of sound the same, and they all are taking things from each other because one of them's probably right. If there is a right, one of them's probably right. They can't all be right. And whichever one they're all stealing from is probably the one that's right. So understanding the habits is going to help in all those different areas. Understanding diets is going to help you tremendously because your diet is not just weight loss or anything like that. It's mental health, it's physical health, it's emotional health. I want to talk about health myths in general, like what is some bullshit that we've been told. I want to talk about memory and brain health. I want to talk about sleep. But yeah, I've got a ton of material that we're going to work through. I'm still going to try to do some interviews throughout this, but I'm going to be putting out some videos like this, and the goal is to try to get one out every week at least. I've got probably 10 or 12 that I want to do. I travel as well with work stuff, so I'm going to try to get these out as much as I can. In the meantime, if you have any questions or if you have any topics that you do want me to cover, all you have to do is either send me a message, comment it on YouTube or, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Share it on social media if you found this information helpful with someone. The truth is I would rather you, instead of you sharing this to your page, if this made you think of someone, I would rather you just send it in a direct message to them. And I don't think that my information is one of those things that needs to be shared with everyone, but I do want the information to be shared if you found it helpful, because I do think that I would rather talk to people directly about this stuff. And if there is a pathway to that, it's through direct messaging. It's also through like setting up Zoom calls and things like that. And I love to talk to people about their specific thing and ask questions. I'm not trying to give you a list of things to do. I'm trying to give you a list of questions to answer. And once you can answer those questions, then you know what to do. But I'm pretty good at asking questions. And what I want to do is ask you some questions that make you start thinking about the things you're doing. In the meantime, have a great day. Stay out of trouble. Stay away from crack.
I've seen the damnedest things, man, in the damnedest ways. Said what I had to say to make it day by day.